Welcome to the Business of Platforms, a video podcast series where Vivaldi will be chatting with the world's leading marketers, thinkers, and innovators about the evolution of business and the exciting ways in which platforms are helping companies and brands deliver greater value.
This podcast is all about talking about platforms, digital ecosystems, platform-powered business strategies. And today we have Ian Arthurs. Ian works as the Chief Operating Officer of Taskrabbit. Ian, I wanted to cover in this particular podcast a bit about what's it like to be in the trenches, what's it like to be the COO and actually run a global operations, a two-sided marketplace. But can you give us quickly an update first about what is Taskrabbit, what's the sort of the scope and size and scale of the business, and then a bit about yourself?
Sure, happy to do that. Before I do though, Eric, I have to say it's great to see you again, even though we're on video. I spent formative years at Vivaldi developing strategy and thoughts on entrepreneurship and how to grow businesses before I went to business school. So I just wanted to say thank you. Tons of great memories of working with really awesome people back in the day and a really good alumni network now. So
thank you.
So just a nod and a thank you. And it's great to see Vivaldi thriving now too.
Thank you.
So back to your question. Yeah, what's going on at TaskRabbit? So we are a two-sided marketplace, as you say. We're now in, and actually, so the category in which we operate is within what we called home services before, but now we're moving into a slightly different definition of that. And it's a network to get household tasks done. So we have 140,000 taskers across 45 cities in the US, UK, and now Canada. And a year ago, it's actually a little longer than a year ago, we were acquired by Ikea. We've done hundreds of thousands of Ikea assemblies over our years, and we're growing globally with them now, partnering with them in their retail business to provide services and convenience to their millions of customers throughout the world. 140,000 taskers. We've tripled the size of our team in the last year, so we're in the middle of a lot of scale. And my job right now is COO. I get asked the question quite a lot. It's like, what is a COO? And the truth is that it's different in every single different company. And for our stage right now, a COO really looks at the kind of scaling the human side of our business and delivering the best possible experience to both sides of the marketplace. So running everything from legal and customer service all the way through to partnerships and business driving activities. So the things that I'm really focused on are how do we scale our team, how do we scale our service across multiple countries in the next 3 years, and do that in a seamless way, but do it fast enough. We launch, we iterate, and how do we grow our business with Ikea and as a separate global plan. So there's a lot going on, but the thing that's taking most of my attention right now is particularly internally. So we went from 70 odd people at the acquisition to around about 200 now. And that requires a lot of attention to management and developing the next level of leaders in our company as we grow.
Oh, that sounds interesting. And how can you even digest a growth that's less than a year? You go from 70 to 200 people. So is that a lot on you? And how big is the leadership team? Who is around you in a way? Can you explain sort of like how this works?
Yeah, and the structure of a two-sided marketplace is actually a really interesting topic to dive into. How do we organize ourselves as a company? And how do we organize ourselves to get products and processes out the door and to effectively service a two-sided marketplace with hundreds of thousands of users operating on it every day? You'll note that, at 200 people even right now, that seems really small for the scale that we are at, right? So 45 plus cities, 140,000 taskers, millions of buy side, we call them clients, by the way. Taskers are the people who do the task, and clients are people who buy the task. how do we operate at that very large scale with such a small agile team? And I think that's a fascinating topic to go into. For me here, what we have in our executive team is we have functional leaders, vice presidents, C-level executives that take on particular functions or group of functions. And everyone reports into their function, but we realized a couple of years ago that if we are to provide the best experience to our clients, to our taskers, and to our internal teams who use our customer relationship tools and other internal tools, we need to organize along what we call user groups. So instead of engineers just working on engineering and splitting out to work on different opportunities over time, we actually organize ourselves into user groups, which are kind of like mini business units that focus on particular user groups within our company. So we have clients, and we have a fully staffed team with engineers, full stack engineers, full operations teams that are responsible for driving the demand side of our business and the best experience there. We have a tasker team, likewise for the supply side. We have a tools team for the internal. We also have an Ikea team as well that's dedicated to driving our Ikea business and the best experience there too. So that's how we realized that we needed to organize by our customer groups and think about what's best for them and get institutional knowledge so that we can drive great repeat relationships across the platform. That's the core thing that really matters in our marketplace, is not the acquisition or the fulfillment of a task, but the relationship among the users on our platform. That's what drives our economics going forward.
Yeah, and that's sort of interesting because that's a unique organizational structure almost for a platform business, a two-sided marketplace, because you're literally focusing on that. And if you were to sort of like say, what is the number one sort of fire or burning platform? Is it the demand side? Is it the clients, the customers? Because in a way, TaskRabbit really sort of aggregates demand, and then that attracts, if you will, the taskers. Or I think that's where, or it's both really.
Yeah, that's right. It's both. A true two-sided marketplace is rarely in equilibrium, actually. So we have to focus equally, and it's very hard to focus equally on both sides of the marketplace at the same time. There's always conflicting priorities and demands, and it's our job as an executive team to navigate and to set the right priorities for the organization for a 3-year business plan, a year, and down to a quarter. So that's the majority of my job and the team that works with me on organizing and prioritizing, and then balancing not only between the demand and the supply side, but long-term and short-term investment. So making sure we have enough investment in long-term R&D that we know is not going to pay off for 3 to 5 years. Super expensive right now, but we'd rather do that and build for the future of our future organization than actually investing in a perfect product today. That's another balancing that we see here regularly. Our organization, I don't think, is unique in user groups, but how we operate and the cross-functional collaboration that we see every day. I haven't seen that. I've worked at Airbnb and a couple of startups and Google and as a management consultant before, and this is the most cross-functionally collaborative organization that I've seen. So the biggest challenge that I see, getting to your question, and what keeps me up at night is how do we do that and grow globally? So it's easy enough when we're in San Francisco, New York, Austin, and London. It's relatively easy to coordinate that level of complexity. As we go to new countries and as we work with Ikea, the Ikea CEO was here a couple of months ago. We did a review with him of our year post the acquisition, and generally, without saying too much, he asked us to go faster. He said, TaskRabbit is a more convenient, better priced, more dependable option for IKEA assembly than we've seen anywhere else in the world. And it is digitally native and agile. And we need to grow faster. Hard choices about how to work with local governments. What is the right thing to do for the supply side, for the taskers in the local environment? How do we understand what household tasks and chores, what do they actually look like in a new market like Canada, for example, which is close to the US, but is actually subtly enough different. In London is a great example. It's mostly the same language. Having grown up in Scotland and the UK, I was the de facto translator for the first time that we launched in London. That's how small we were, just to give you a sense of that. And we got a ton of things wrong, right? That we just weren't perfectly culturally relevant. We said words like trucks instead of vans. We didn't realize that cleaning, for example, in London had a natural implicit price cap in it, and that an average cleaner in London doesn't go beyond £12 an hour. You don't understand these things till actually operating in a marketplace. So you can only get some things right, and you have to launch and iterate and move forward. Now, that's true for close-in cultures, we believe, mainly Western Europe and America. When we start to think about Asia, the cultures, particularly in terms of services and entering the home, are so different, and I believe we need to take a different approach. I don't know what that is yet, but we benefit very much from having Ikea as a parent, not only for the capital that they provide, but the access to their customers, and also depth of knowledge that they have created over decades and decades of operating in these countries. So we can leverage their customer insights. They've done a multitude of studies on what life at home looks like in each of their markets that they operate. So we can leapfrog on top of that.
But what I find so interesting, Ian, is that what you refer to, if you think of a transportation like Uber, take this example again, the transportation is more or less the same. It's a driver and a rider. But you're not really dealing with a simple standardized service. You're dealing with household tasks, and household tasks are very, very local, and which requires a lot of adaptation, which I can see for you as a COO is an extremely complex challenge, because obviously the adaptation is, I mean, you can learn from Ikea, but Ikea doesn't know as much about household tasks because it's a service on the top of Ikea almost that you're providing independent of Ikea, in fact.
That's completely right. And we find it, again, fascinating thinking about our growth trajectory. The sharing economy or the on-demand economy platforms that are globally famous today, Uber, Lyft, Airbnb, to name a few, they started and did amazingly well in relatively simple categories and known categories. So it's not that hard for a customer to move from a hotel room to an Airbnb guest. It's not that hard to move from a taxi to getting a Lyft driver to take you from A to B. What is different is the multitude of tasks. So what are household tasks? What are chores? What is the multitude of things that take up the majority of our time at home? All of those things that I know you have and I have as well that sit in our to-do list. The door is broken. The garage needs to be cleaned and painted. We have somebody staying, so therefore I need to clean and update the house. I have my children's birthday party. All of those things are so wide and varied that it's really, really hard to figure out what that looks like on a local basis. What we have done is consolidate it to approximately 45 categories, generic categories, handyman, minor home repair, things like that seem to fit in most parts of most locations in which we operate. And we see through research and then our own launch and iterate philosophy, what the demand and supply looks like in each market. So for example, New York, because it's incredibly hard to get around in New York and people move apartments quite a lot, moving, and by moving I mean a person with a vehicle that can help you move a storage unit or something like that. It's not like giant apartment moves, but moving is a huge category for us, huge, and way bigger than we thought it would be. In London, it's the opposite. It's actually not as big. And what is really big in London is handyman. Apparently there was a shortage of handyman, and it's really hard to get a handyman in London. And you can only figure those things out when you're actually really operating. You can guess at it through local research, and you can put some hypotheses together, but it's only until you actually operate and then have an offering as well that has quality or isn't great that you can get a real sense of the demand side. So again, it kind of goes back to new city launches look like you have an understanding through research, but you know that that is imperfect, and you have to launch, you have to learn and iterate, which means you have to go fast with a minimum viable product kind of approach.
Yes.
Very quickly build on the lessons after that. And that's what we've done in London. I think we've been in London for 3 to 4 years now. And it's now one of our largest cities. So we've learned a lot from that. Canada, we just launched recently, a month or so ago. And already Toronto is heading to be one of our largest cities. But the demand mix and the supply mix is different than we thought it would be.
And Ian, I was expecting, as I listened to the way you adapt in an agile way, iterate and iterate. I was thinking about, marketplaces. There is a big discussion these days. There is that AI and ML, machine learning, will all change everything. But when I look at Taskrabbit and when I look at the challenge, really, it is actually very physical. It's actually very operational. It has a lot less to do with technology, and it has a lot to do with the process of how quickly you iterate, because you cannot predict in any way or form a potential service. It is really iterative. The surprise that you just mentioned between London and New York in terms of demand. So it is not a technology question. It is literally an operational, agile, design thinking, learning question, it seems.
Yeah, I think that comes first, right? If there's what do you offer to whom and what works and what sticks? And then the next layer, machine learning, helps us really understand the optimization around that. So we've got a great data science team here that has done a number of things really well for us that help us optimize beyond the initial launch. So I'll give you a couple of examples of how important this is for us. And these are the things that happen in the background that no one really notices, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So a recommendation on TaskRabbit, I'll back up for a second. So how TaskRabbit works today is, if you want this, I'm sitting beside an Ikea table here. If you would like this Ikea table built for you, you would go on taskrabbit.com and you would post that job to the marketplace. And then you would see TaskRabbit would render for you, given the specifics of that task, where it is, how big it is, the time, et cetera, we would render for you the most relevant taskers that could do that job for you, right? And the machine learning algorithm that goes into that rendering of taskers is actually really, really quite advanced. And the better that we get at rendering the best taskers, the higher likelihood the job is of succeeding, and the higher likelihood the job is of developing a repeat relationship between the buy side and the sell side, or the client and the tasker. So that machine learning algorithm cannot be understated in terms of its importance. And many factors go into it. And it reminds me, in my old days of working at Google, we had a quality score, effectively an ad score, within the AdWords system, and it's very much like that. So that's one example. And the other example, I think as well, is in predicting the next layer. What is next for a client and a tasker? So we're starting to get a lot of information, super useful information, that is volunteered by clients. So in creating a task management network, what we need to understand is, what does the client have on their to-do list? That's a very simple thing to do. What does your to-do list look like? And then from that, we can start to pair taskers. We can suggest times and dates when they're in your area, and we can predict what is next for you. And that then develops that repeat relationship over time, which increases lifetime value. And ultimately, that's what we're heading towards. So yes, it starts as an operational problem, right? How do we organize these things, and how do we launch and iterate? But behind all of this, optimization really happens with the help of machine learning.
I think this is so wonderful, because I just learned that some of the basics, some of the, and how you combine the machine learning, the technology, AI, and the new technologies, and like optimize. But at the same time, it is still also the basic business understanding customer needs and market by market. So I think that the way you bring those two together in a marketplace, I think that to me is very fascinating, because you all think that we all think that the future lies of marketplaces, that everything is governed by AI, and I think what I learn here is how still the everyday reality of things you cannot predict are still part of the success formula. And
with humans here, Eric, right? This is a sharing of skills platform. Instead of a sharing of assets platform, this is a sharing of skills. And
yes.
Humans are unpredictable. And mostly we've learned, actually, if there's any kind of learning over the last 5.5 years of TaskRabbit, the average reaction that I would get when we're talking about TaskRabbit a long time ago is, ooh, isn't that risky? Having a stranger come to your home and do handyman work? And our data shows, over millions and millions of tasks, our data shows that actually the risk is very, very small. And by and large, humans do good things together. When you create a connection and a real relationship between a buyer and a seller, and you've done the homework to make sure that the buyer comes through social channels, et cetera, has some level of screening, and that the seller goes through background checks, has done multiple tasks before, you share information about their task history and what they've done. Once you strip out an initial layer of risk, once they connect, it develops lifelong business relationships. It's fascinating to see. It's a huge study in how humans work together here too.
Yes, and the reason why I'm so interested about TaskRabbit is because I read in paper over the weekend by a venture capitalist, A16Z, I think is the company called, and they talk about the future of marketplaces. And the conversation is, and I think Ian, you talk about it, that the early days was very simple matching of product, if you will. That the future lies in very complex services. And however you think, what you are doing is with the various 45 different tasks that you identify, or categories, with a professional, some more professional and less professional, sort of a professional tasker workforce, if you will, on the other side of the platform. That's a highly advanced managed marketplace. That's not basics, of just a matching of a driver and a rider, if you will, which is very different. And the suggestion by this venture capitalist is that that's the future, that the technologies are now developed, mature, that TaskRabbit is one of those companies that will now, in this new technology environment, or being able to develop sophisticated and grow rapidly, because of the now we have arrived at that complexity and can solve these complex matching, if you will. And so one question I have is if I think of what makes TaskRabbit successful, and it has to be your ability to predict tasks from the home, and to create more and more velocity and more repeats of the same task. It isn't the, and of course that translates also for the taskers. The more tasks they can actually fulfill. So the challenge, there's a challenge of globalization that your parent is asking you, the speed to, but there's also the more you get homes, a particular, let's see, one home, to get more and more tasks accomplished from that home. So it's like this, it's almost like a velocity, or that sort of must be a success metric. Like in Facebook, they call it daily average users versus monthly average users. And there must be a similar metric that sort of sticks in your mind, Ian, that says, this is what makes us successful as a profitable business.
Yeah, absolutely. We spend a lot of time thinking about not just the matching, but how to develop relationships. at the end of the day, much like any other internet business, we care about lifetime value of our customer and how that relates to the cost of acquisition, right? So very simple business school kind of ratio is what's the LTV over time, right? And this was all like very kind of standard venture capital unit economics that we had prior to the Ikea acquisition. And our job really here is to provide repeat business opportunities to our taskers so they can grow their own business, and we create this ecosystem for a client to have a trusted group of taskers that they can get all of their household tasks done through, right? So TaskRabbit, to you, Eric, if you're using TaskRabbit, isn't 140,000 people. It's 10 or 15 people who relate to you individually, know your preferences, have information from us about what you care about, how you like your house to be cleaned, or what you're really thinking about as your next home improvement project. Those kind of things are what we're spending the majority of time on in the background, and that's the difference between investing in long-term R&D and then just developing like our just growth plan today, marketing today. What does it look like when we have a combined IKEA plus TaskRabbit out-of-home campaign in New York or Toronto? That's the today, right? That's kind of relatively easy. The harder stuff is how do we get Eric to go from 4 tasks a year to 6 tasks a year? Because we know he's got 10 things in his to-do list, and he really wants to get them done and feel more accomplished as a dad and as somebody who's running the home.
Fascinating challenge. I read something. There is a statement in the Bible actually, and it's by Matthew, and it says, "No man can have 2 masters, because if that happens, then you hate one and you love the other." But in a way, you are in the middle of having just 2 masters on this side of the platform, on that side of the platform. So I feel for you.
Responsibility. Like really what we should be doing is any good scalable marketplace should provide transparent information about each side of the marketplace so they can transact seamlessly and kind of get out of the way, right? So you mentioned a little bit about the future being higher end managed services. Yes, I think that is true, but ultimately what ends up starting as a human action, such as a human saying, "Hey, what's on your to-do list?" or how many taskers do you need to paint a 4-bedroom house, will be taken over by our algorithms and by our product. And we keep kind of moving up the chain of complexity. That's what the future holds for us. And again, our job as a marketplace really is to connect buyer and seller with the right amount of information so that they can transact and then get out of the way. Taskers are not employees. It's very important for us to remember that. They are independent contractors who set their own rates, work whenever they want, and work with whoever they want as well. And I think it's just amazing to me. I think Bill Gurley said it. I was rereading Mary Meeker's Internet Trends report a couple of weeks ago, and there's a quote from Bill Gurley, who is one of the original investors in Uber. And he was just remarking on how incredible it is. It's a sea change in labor markets that you can have. I think Uber have like 3 million drivers now, and effectively they self-organize, right? Like this is 3 million humans around the world who are not told what to do, right? So the load balancing of supply and demand comes from sharing of information and choice, rather than telling you what to do and working 9 to 5. It's a sea change in how labor markets operate that we're just beginning to see today. Incredible change.
And it is almost self-governed. You like what did you say? Managed in some ways, or
self-governed. It balances and load balances itself.
Load balances.
But really, that's the job of the marketplace, to set up the right amount of supply and demand, the right information for liquidity, marketplace liquidity. And then the market figures itself out.
Wonderful. What a wonderful view under the hood in a way. Ian, I have to thank you so much, because I think such a rare treat to actually see what it's like to have two masters, if you will, on both sides of the platform in the marketplace, and to get sort of a little sense. And what I thought was so refreshing is how you balance the realities of business, understanding the needs of the home, let's say those 45 categories, and also balance the technology side, so like where technology applies in the optimization. I think that's a real interesting perspective that you brought us. Is there anything that's on your mind that you would want to leave to the viewers, readers, listeners for today?
I think there's something about the human impact of what on-demand. There's multiple names for what we do. On-demand sharing economy platforms. There's something really about the human impact here that often goes unsaid in the news. And I think it's worth talking about a little bit. Who are the taskers and who are the clients? Who are the drivers? Who are the hosts and the guests? And Airbnb do a wonderful job of this, I think, but there's more that can be said and understood when we really understand who these people are. Just a couple of examples. So we have, as I said, 140,000 taskers. They earn on average $35 an hour. That's multiple times the national minimum wage.
Yes.
And that income is really meaningful. It's not necessarily for everyone. It's not full-time income. It's additional income that helps, for some people, pay the bills. For some people, it helps them go on vacation or do a project that they've been meaning to do. And on the flip side, when they do that work, it gives time back for the clients to do the things that they love too. So we're really seeing a win-win-win opportunity here. People who need it get additional income. They get joy from doing great things for their clients. Clients get time back in their day. And everyone's benefiting from the ecosystem. So I just think we have to pause every now and again and think about those people as well. I'll give you an example. There's a tasker who works for me every now and again who's a really skilled handyman. And he earns a significant, a very large amount of money on the platform. He put his daughter through college through TaskRabbit income. And he contributes back to the community on a regular basis. He drove down to Houston after the last hurricane and contributed his own skills and time in order to benefit that community. And that's the kind of people that we're working with here. So whenever we think of, or you see a headline about the sharing economy and some of its troubles, I think we have to remember the net benefit from the human side as well.
The social good is really, I think, wonderful. I think a real nice, if you will, sort of like a quotation mark, sort of like that we can finish here the podcast. Ian, I hope we connect very soon again. Thank you so much.
Likewise, Eric. I hope to see you soon, and thank you very much. It was great to talk to you.
Thank you indeed.